I am pleased to call to order the 121st meeting of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. We're back at the Heinz Auditorium at 10:30 on May 15th. We will start out with the approval of minutes. Item number 2 on the agenda, Commissioner McHugh.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the minutes are in the book, and as we've done in the past, there's several sets of minutes there, so I'd like to do them seriatim. And the first set is the minutes of May 1. There we go. The minutes of May 1, 2014. And I would move their approval in the form they appear in the book with the usual reservations for mechanical and typographical corrections.
This is the May 2nd? Is that
No,
right?
May 1. May 1st is the first set of the minutes.
Oh, got it, okay. Second?
I actually have a comment on the minutes, on those minutes.
You want to
Sure.
Second it first?
Yeah, I can second it, but
All
with a
right, go
comment.
ahead, yeah.
At around 143 on page 3 of the minutes, there was discussion relative to requesting public comment versus on the topic of number of slots versus gaming positions. And I would just like for the minutes to reflect some of that discussion.
For the minutes to summarize the discussion on the number of slots.
What, just to highlight that that discussion took place, a brief summary highlight.
And so if we added something to the effect that the discussion, because nothing else is summarized there, so let me just think out loud with you. Something along the lines of the discussion included the topic of how to deal with the number of slot machines in a arena where many seats can be posted around a single computer, something like that.
Something
And
like that,
discussion.
right.
All right.
Right.
All right.
And the decision was to post that
For public comment.
policy question for public comments.
All right. Artem, do you have the substance of that? Yeah, good. I'll work with you later to make sure that gets into the minutes.
Maybe make sure Commissioner Zuniga sees the
Right,
draft. Yeah.
right.
Any other discussion on the minutes of May 1st? You want to make a motion?
The motion's already been made and
Oh,
seconded.
sorry.
Yeah.
Then, if there's no further discussion, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it unanimously.
All right, the second set of minutes is, the second set is the set for May 2, 2014, the following day. I'd make the same motion, that is to approve the minutes as they appear in the meeting materials with mechanical and typographical corrections reserved.
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner? No discussion. All in favor of the motion accepting the minutes for May 2nd? Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it unanimously.
And finally, then, Mr. Chairman, are the minutes for May 8th, 2014, the minutes of the meeting that we held last week, and they too appear in the meeting materials, and I would move their adoption with the reservation for mechanical and typographical corrections.
Second. This falls within that amendment, but at 257 on page 3, Councilor O'Flaherty and Councilor Frangello's names are misspelled. They're right.
Oh, yes, they are.
They're
All
right. They're right elsewhere, but
Right, right. All right, let's make sure that that is done correctly.
any further discussion? Then with that adjustment, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it unanimously. We are on into item number 3, Workforce Development and Diversity. Jill Griffin, our Director of Workforce Development and Diversity.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
On page 15 of your packet is the revised diversity plan from Penn National regarding the Plain Ridge Park Casino. may remember that we were all back here at on April 3rd, and representatives from both Penn National and Turner Construction were here, and they also joined me today. And maybe I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. Karen?
Sure. Karen Bailey with Penn National Gaming. Joining me today is I've got Jack Ron, who is Vice President of Construction Project Management with Penn National Gaming, Emil Giordano with Turner Construction, who's also responsible for the oversight of our diversity program from Turner's perspective, our construction management firm. We also have joining us for the first time, I believe, in front of you is Lance George, our new general manager, who will be assigned here at the Plain Ridge facility, joining us from the very warm and temperate area of Iowa. So I'm sure he's very pleased to be back here in Massachusetts. And also with me is Jeff Morris, who joins me in the Public Affairs Department at Penn National.
Well, welcome to Mr. George. We have a migration from the Midwest as part of our...
Right. The migration started with me in 1958, and we also had Director Vanderlinden, and now you, and
No, it didn't start with you, Mr. Chairman. It started with me in 1946.
from Iowa? Oh.
No, from South Dakota.
Oh, that's not the Midwest.
Well, it's the upper Midwest.
Anyway, welcome. We're glad to have you here.
Great. So commissioners, you'll recall that we posted the original diversity plan for public comment following the April 3rd meeting. And we reviewed with you both verbal and written responses to that plan at that time. We brought the diversity plan back to you on April 17th, where there was specific feedback raised by the New England Area Conference of the NAACP. You voted and approved the plan, but asked us to come back regarding some specific areas of the plan that Mr. Cofield had raised. Mr. Cofield commented on the comprehensiveness of the outreach plan and asked for some more detail on that plan. He also requested information on the enforcement mechanisms of the plan. And he had suggestions regarding increased effort regarding incorporating MBEs, minority business enterprise, WBEs and VBEs, veteran business enterprises, in the planning, legal, or audit work associated with the pre and post construction work. So we are back here today to talk about those topics. Before I highlight some of the updates in this plan that respond to those topics, I thought I would ask Mass Gaming Commission's General Counsel Blue to comment on the enforcement penalties, because she's looking at that.
Thank you. I know the commission requested that we do some additional research into enforcement and then general practices surrounding that. We have started that research and we're reviewing it currently, so I expect that we will be able to share that with the commission shortly.
So Penn National has made changes to the diversity plan based on the feedback from both the commission and the Mass Gaming Commission's vendor advisory group and the NAACP. They've expanded their internal diversity committee to include members of the vendor advisory group, Reggie Nunnally from the State Office of Supplier Diversity, and Dr. Fred McKinney from the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council. They have expanded information about aggressively outreaching to minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. They've added information about their commitment to engaging minority, women, and veteran business enterprises in the outside services in the remaining design phase, as well as the post-construction activities such as legal and audit, as per Juan Cofield's suggestion. That can be found on page 4. At the Commission's request, Penn has created sub-goals in addition to the combined 11% minority women business enterprise goal. They've created a sub-goal of 4% for minority business enterprise and 7% for women business enterprise. And I'll have them talk more about this in a few minutes. But that's the highlight. Unless you have more questions for me, I'm going to turn the mic over to Karen Bailey, who will talk more about the details of the plan and the update.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, thank you again for allowing us the time to provide you an update to our construction diversity plan. Since we last met, we've addressed the conditions the Commission set on the approval of our plan. Specifically, we've addressed the question of an enforcement mechanism on the goals set forth for our construction team, examined the opportunities that we can provide in our post-construction professional service needs, and have separated out the 11% MBE WBE goals that we set for our construction subcontracting program. As outlined in our revised plan, Penn has entered into an incentive-based program with Turner Construction, wherein it can receive an additional fee on top of its base fee for achieving certain deliverables, such as contracting the project or constructing the project on time and on budget, and importantly, for their efforts in implementing and helping to oversee our diversity plan. In addition, Penn has attached a copy of our diversity plan to its contract with Turner to reinforce the importance of their role in this process. This plan includes remedies for failure to comply among subcontractors with their own mandatory diversity plans. As a point of additional follow-up, we have reviewed this incentive-based program with Juan Cofield, as Jill had mentioned, of the New England Area Conference, NAACP, and has allowed us to convey his approval of this incentive-based approach. The specifics of that approach are on page 5, and we've also supplied a copy of the specific language in our contract with Turner, which we have not made public yet, as we're still waiting for the signatures between our two parties for that full contract. But to outline the contract language in the for you today, it basically states, in addition, and I'm pulling this exact language, in addition, we have a discretionary bonus payment plan of up to 1% of the cost of work, and this is for Turner Construction. And this particular bonus payment plan is at the owner's sole discretion. One of the 5 explicit criteria listed in this incentive plan is that the construction is to consider the construction manager's successful efforts with respect to the equal employment program per the attached exhibit, which is, of course, the diversity plan. So the plan language reflecting our incentive program is on page 5 of the diversity plan, which you have a copy of. And then the more explicit language as one of the 5 criterion for their bonus structure is listed in our contract, and then will be available, obviously, for your review when ready. We've also identified the following professional service areas where we think MBE, WBE, and VBEs can successfully compete for post-construction work. And this is not operations related. That's a separate plan which we'll be presenting to you in the next couple of weeks. Those areas are specifically in the legal and audit services, as Jill had mentioned. We've also discussed this with the NAACP, and they've indicated their interest in assisting us in identifying the firms who can successfully compete for these opportunities. So we look forward to working with him on that function. Finally, we've also set specific goals within our 11% MBE WBE participation goal. These goals, as Jill mentioned, are 7% WBE, 4% MBE, in addition to the aspirational goals that we have already set for VBEs at 3%. MBE awards have to date actually outpaced our WBE goals, or at least in the awards of our initial construction program. Of the $17 million that we have committed so far in our overall construction program, 21% has actually been committed to MBEs, and 3% of those dollars have been committed to WBEs. We believe this is a good start, and we'll hope to continue this trajectory as we pursue the additional awards of our construction program. We thank you, Jill, all of the advisors, and everybody that has been part of this process for their input in the development of this program. We believe it's a strong plan and look forward to a successful outcome. And we're available to answer any questions along with all the folks that have some of the specifics that you may have questions regarding.
Questions, thoughts?
Well, I don't have any questions. I think the incentive-based approach and the process for carefully monitoring achievement of the goals and then the remedial plan really are major accomplishments. And I, for one, think this is a great step forward.
Thank you.
Well, a great step. I'm not sure you weren't there already, but that's why I'm just qualifying it. But I think represents a very thoughtful approach to this.
I would agree. Have you ever tried the incentive, is this a first for you, for the company, to have an incentive-based kind of just a way of really bringing this to the forefront and making sure people are paying attention?
Sure. It's this is probably the first time it's been explicit in sort of factors 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. However, it's always been a consideration within our contracts with our construction management firms and the various programs that we've had throughout the country, and specifically with Turner. So it's always been a category in which we've considered. And thankfully, we've always had a successful program with our construction management firms and have been able to award them their bonus, their incentive plans as such.
Okay. Thanks.
I also applaud the work that you've done, the follow-up that you did with Mr. Cofield. And I applaud you on setting a rather aggressive goal. As I think we'd all agree on the veteran business participation. I've said it before, it's kind of a new realm and a new area. I think working with our licensing folks, though, I had a chance to visit with Director Acosta the other day. We are finding ways to count those veteran businesses that may not be registered through that one certification source out there, but finding a way that we can look at the principal of the company, their DD 214 form. Thanks, Dave. I got the thumbs up that I got that right. And using that as a way to validate and give you credit for a Massachusetts veteran-owned business. So, keep up the good work. I know our vendor advisory team is going down to visit your facility tomorrow and get a tour and begin to work on other issues and brainstorming. So we greatly appreciate your partnership in this.
Thank you. We're excited to host the team down there tomorrow. I know a lot of work's has gone into preparing for their visit.
Yeah, I join my colleagues in applauding your approach. I wonder though if you've also have goals of local hiring as per your local and regional hiring as per your host and surrounding community agreements. Do you see any tension between the goals over there and the goals over here?
We actually, with the construction portion of our agreements, we don't have those specific local preferences in our agreements. Obviously, we always want to hire, we go in concentric circles, if you will, as to how we'd like to award, but we obviously understand the importance that our license has attached to our minority goals overall on the construction side. You will see our thoughts on the workforce portion, our operational workforce, as well as our ongoing procurement plans that are due to you in the next couple of weeks, reflecting those local priorities, specifically in our workforce hiring. You'll see those addressed in those plans.
Okay, look forward to that too.
We actually, as a preview to that, we have already talked to Mr. Cofield on the workforce side and received some good direction from him, particularly with our local obligations, and so we've already started those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Could I just add, I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Cofield yesterday, and he shares the belief that a carrot works better than a stick. So he supports the concept of the bonus for meeting those goals. He did want to urge that the bonus should be based on achieving the goals rather than best efforts, and I just wanted to express that. It sounds like the contract language may take care of.
Right, we're comfortable in the language that we have in our contract with the verbiage of successful efforts as it relates to our diversity plans.
I assume it's implicit, Director Griffin, in what you're saying, that your various advisory groups, formal and informal, have seen this. You said Mr. Cofield had, and they feel like this is getting to the standard that they were hoping we would get to?
Yes, I've had feedback, specific feedback from several individuals. Warren Bacon from the MBDA, Boston Business Center, the organization that focuses on supplier diversity, has offered to assist in terms of helping to foster strategic alliances and mentoring. I think they want to be a part of this effort as well. They're a member of our vendor advisory. They did point out that they hope that the MBE goal of 4% is exceeded.
Yeah, that's one thing that I wanted to speak to. The addition of that Commissioner Stebbins has really led the way on is of adding veterans businesses is a really constructive and important step, but it needs to be additive to the total, not another way to relieve the pressure on getting MBEs, which is the hardest part of the job. You know, the increased focus on women businesses has had the unintended consequence to a certain extent of relieving the pressure on trying to find and help develop qualified MBEs because they are harder to come by. And if the number doesn't change, but the categories that go into the number changes, if the aggregate doesn't change, then it becomes a disincentive, in effect, a perverse disincentive to do the hard work that's required to find qualified and to help develop qualified MBEs. So it's really important that this be additive, not subtracting, in effect, and that it doesn't relieve the pressure. And you know, everybody acknowledges, all the people we've talked to in the advisory groups as well as on the applicant side acknowledge that finding qualified minority vendors to do a lot of this work is not easy. And we talked a lot about developing partnerships where you don't rely on them completely, but you bring them in for a piece of the action, and in the process work in mentoring roles and so forth. So I agree with the 4%. It would be nice to exceed that. And I just want to make sure that, you know, we don't inadvertently let the VBB, MBE, the WBE have this negative unintended consequence. The other thing is, when Mr. Cofield was here last week, he talked about, I thought he was talking about expanding the qualified spend in the construction project to include legal work and post-audit work and so forth. And somebody, it might have been you, somebody jumped right up from, I thought, from either Turner or Penn and said, that's a really good idea, let's pursue that. I don't see that reflected in the nature, in the spend. I wondered if it is meant to be added to the spend. B, it's not a lot of dollars, but it might be an area where, you know, significant positive impact could be had.
Are you referring to you mean the definitions?
Yeah, the qualified spend still talks about design and construction of the gaming facility, and if I remember the conversation right, he was saying, you know, there's a lot of other money that's spent in the construction phase in the service industry, i.e. Lawyers and auditors, and couldn't that be added?
Chairman Crosby, there's, in the middle of page 4, there's a highlighted paragraph. In addition to our goal of providing participation opportunities in the remaining design phase, we will also seek to identify opportunities for MBEs, WBEs, and VBEs to participate in our post-construction non-operations activities.
Yeah, that's good, that's good, but that's different.
Okay.
I think what I thought he was talking about was during the construction phase, that there are service, professional service roles in the construction phase that could be added in. Was it, do I
Actually,
remember that?
he actually spoke.
I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
he spoke to the pre- and post-construction phases, in which we believe is encapsulated in the qualified spend definition on page 9, in which we have design and construction as part of that. And so the remaining, and what we taught, and then what Director Griffin referred to is the specific response to Mr. Colefield's request at the last meeting with regards to things like post-construction services, and what we've been able to identify in our conversations with him are on the legal and auditing side. So we have the design and construction, which is encapsulated on page 9 in the definition of qualified spend, plus the specific post-construction services that we're exploring with him as well.
Chairman, I think I have two words that I think address your concern, because you are talking about construction phase, not necessarily post-construction. And I would insert or suggest that what we're talking about here is both direct and indirect costs to the construction and design phase, not just hard costs or direct costs in terms of subcontractors and contractors. To include the likes of professional services firms. It's probably already implicitly included in the way this reads, but it's just a suggestion.
And I do, now that I read more closely that highlighted paragraph, I do see what you're saying. You're talking about post-construction non-operations, so that
Correct.
it is getting to what. But I agree with Commissioner Zuniga, just to sort of make the point even clearer, that direct and indirect costs to design and construction would, it's just, I think you guys get it, and we've said that all along, that we appreciate that this is something you seem to be taking seriously and working hard on, but every time you add a word or two that emphasizes the point, it raises the criticality of it and the sensitivity of it. So I think that might be a good addition.
Thank you.
Great.
All right. Anything else on this topic? I did have, well, I mentioned just as sort of as an FYI and a reminder, I thought, as I've said, I think this partnership idea is a really creative idea. I don't know whether it's SOP already, but the combination of finding a way to involve these various kinds of businesses, and in the process to do some development work and mentoring work with them. I mean, a business's job is not to mentor other businesses, I understand that. But there is a subset of these companies' obligations, and I hope you'll take the lead, and you guys, think about it too. It's really an interesting way to help develop and bring along and involve companies that are struggling to figure out how do you get to play in the big leagues. So I hope you'll pursue that.
So we'll be talking more about that the next vendor advisory meeting down in Plainville tomorrow.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, the status of this is not quite on target, but the status of the Community College Institute, and can you just quick tell us where they're at? Are they in the process of pipelining people by now, or where for Plain Ridge?
They're in the process of, they've met with the Vice President of Talent Management, Corey Whitaker, for Penn National, where they got more specific information regarding the numbers of employees and specifically the number of skilled employees that would be necessary to inform their training pipeline. And this meeting also included members of the Career Center several career centers down there who have experience in areas like food and beverage and IT that was of interest to Penn National.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We need a vote, do we not? Isn't that
sorry,
the,
I'm sorry.
isn't that the idea here, that we would vote to approve the diversity plan presented by Penn National? I
Yeah.
think.
Thank you. You're right. I'm sorry. I apologize. Are you okay with adding the words direct and indirect?
Yes, that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Then,
Mr.
Commissioner
Chair,
Stebbins, do you want?
I would move that we would give final approval to the diversity plan for the design and construction phase of Plain Ridge Park Casino as presented with the recommended changes that came before us today, as well as the recommended edits as suggested by Commissioner Zuniga.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of accepting Commissioner Stebbins' recommendation to adopt this plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Nay for the opposed. The ayes have it unanimously. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And again, Mr. George, welcome. Thank you. Look forward to working with you. Item 3B,
Commissioners, I'm joined by my colleague, Deputy Counsel Grossman, and we're introducing 205 CMR 137 with the goal of protecting the consumer and ensuring the workforce is properly trained. These regulations pertain to the certification of gaming schools, specifically regarding training for dealers, slot machine technicians, or surveillance personnel. And you may remember we brought the first draft to you on April 17th, I believe. And we have had conversations, as we mentioned last time, with both the Division of Professional Licensure and the Community College Coalition, MCCTI. And we're here to present this version, which has incorporated some changes based on feedback from the commission. So I'm going to ask my colleague, Attorney Grossman, to highlight some of the changes.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
There are just a couple of points I'd like to make. Otherwise, I would suggest that this is in good form for purposes of moving it through the promulgation process, opening it up to public comment, and ultimately holding a public hearing on these regulations. Since you've seen this last, we made a couple of changes. Notably, we included language, this is on page 3 and 4 now, shoring up the requirements for the curriculum for slot machine repair and maintenance and for surveillance personnel. The language there is based in part on the Atlantic Coast College curriculum, and we think in general it captures what these programs should include. The other major adjustment we made here was that, since you've seen this last, that we changed the nature of the curriculum from a recommended curriculum to a mandatory curriculum for any entity that wants to run one of these schools. And that was done at the recommendation of some of the entities that Jill just mentioned. It would be helpful to them and to us ultimately to have more of a set curriculum. So those are the two main changes we've made. There are two other things that aren't in your draft that I'd like to bring to your attention just before we move forward. The first is in the surveillance section, we inadvertently used the term security in a couple of instances, and I would just suggest the word security should be changed to surveillance, because we're not targeting this at security personnel, it's being targeted at surveillance personnel. The second is that it was brought to my attention that we didn't have any provisions in here for any renewal of this certification. So on page 2, I would recommend in paragraph 5, where we say that the certification issued by the commission shall be coterminous with the underlying licensure issued by DPL or higher education. We just add in a line that says that in order to maintain the certification upon the expiration of the underlying licensure or approval, that the applicant has to come back to the commission with proof of renewal of their license and advise the commission as to any changes to the materials since they were initially submitted. Those are the only two, so those are the only two changes I would recommend we add that you don't have in the materials before you. Otherwise, this is pretty much the same draft we saw before.
What do we anticipate that the Department of Licensure term of those certifications would be? Do they have a standard
Yes.
life?
There is a set term. I
set term.
I can't remember what it is. I assume it's
Yeah.
2 or 3 years.
I'm not certain.
We can come back to that later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Am I mistaken, was the training relative to responsible gaming, was that in the last form?
No, that's another good point, actually. That's another addition we added with the input of our Director of Problem Gambling. Some more specific provisions relative to problem gambling. Those fall under the table games curriculum. So it's on page 3.
It starts on 4, bottom of page 4.
It's actually on page 5 at the top. It's paragraph 5. Although it relates only to the table game curriculum. And it just sets out the particulars of what that training would involve.
This is become certified. Oh, sorry. Oh, here it is. Okay. I see it. 3E. Are you in the middle of something? Excuse me. I just had a question. I'm explained to 3E. It looks to me like basically our division of licensing is basically the party that does the certification here. But there is a proof of licensure by DPL. What does that step consist of?
The whole plan here essentially is that we are, in essence, deferring to other entities that have primary jurisdiction over these types of schools. The difficulty is that they fit into 2 basic categories. There are private schools that could offer this type of training, and then there are, like the community colleges, the public institutions that may offer this type of training. And each are overseen by different bodies. So what we have set out to do is to recognize those approvals or certifications. So in the context of a private training school, the Division of Professional Licensure has a program, statutory authorization, and a set of regulations under which they license all training schools, not just gaming schools. And what we are saying here is that before a private school can get certified as a gaming school, it first has to go through the licensure process at DPL, in which they check the curriculum to make sure it comports with, in this case, what our standards are. They check the instructors to make sure they're qualified. And here, in our regulations, we set a minimum standard for the instructors. And they have a whole other litany of other requirements that they ensure are in place prior to licensing a trade school. That would be helpful in our case. So we are, in many respects, deferring to them to oversee the school. What these regulations do is that it sets out a very clear curriculum for them to ensure is in place, because they don't have the specific expertise relative to gaming issues to know what the curriculum should be. So they have asked us to tell them what the curriculum should be. And the companion to that is they asked that we set out some minimum standards for that should be applied to the instructors. And here, I think we said that each instructor shall have at least 5 years practical experience in the field that they want to instruct for. But aside from that, we are largely deferring to their program. If they were to take action against a school, we would then look to take action against that school based upon that. And the same can be said for the community college side of things. They have an infrastructure in place by which they approve courses and programs. And we are not interfering, if you will, with that. We are saying, you go and do that. Once you're approved to run the school, as they've outlined for the commission on a number of occasions, then come to us, and we will go ahead and offer you a certification. And we've actually been in communication with them on these regulations. Obviously, we will look forward to their more public comment, but in general, I think that this comports with the program that they'd be comfortable with. So everything else included in here is really just an infrastructure to make sure that we can, on an administrative level, certify the schools and decertify them if the need arises. But the heart of this is in setting the curriculum and the standard for instructors.
So is it accurate to say that the commission will license a school if it has been licensed by DPL?
Basically. There are a few other things here, but that's the heart of it.
So if you license by DPL and you come to us, it's basically a rubber stamp process. You know, it's essentially so all we're doing here, I mean, these regs could be DPL regs, right? It's a little strange to have them be our
Well,
regs.
DPL regs are far more comprehensive than these.
So additionally, we're collecting lists of gaming equipment as required by federal law. We need to keep track of where slot machines are and things like that. So there are additional requirements.
Yes, so the certification by DPL is a prerequisite to our
Yes.
licensing.
Right.
Yes.
So we're building on what DPL has for their certification.
Do we have any knowledge of how long their process takes, where they are, what kind of a backlog they have in terms of licensing such things?
Well, they already have a lot of people that they've licensed, a lot of schools, and
You know, we've had several conversations with them, and that hasn't come up as an issue in terms of the backlog. I think DPL expressed that and requested that there be clarity regarding the curriculum so that they were, and the instructor requirements so that, it wouldn't slow them down. But that hasn't come up as an issue at all.
And that's only one side. Then there's the community colleges that are then certified by, what body approves their curriculum? Is it the Board of Higher Education?
So this is a little tricky because the side of the house that the community colleges most likely would be running these trainings is their vocational.
Vocational, yep.
But in order to receive federal funding, the community colleges need to be certified by the Department of Labor. So we're using that.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a, excuse me, I had a question about the in-house training done by licensees
Good question.
and how these regs would affect that training.
They're not constrained by it.
So,
That was mine.
but that's a really good question. We did clarify that licensee, training for licensees, employees is exempt from these requirements.
In fact, I think we would expect that even once someone goes through a program like this and they get hired, that there will, of course, be some training put on by the gaming licensee. And that is not something we're attempting to capture here.
Have we had the conversation, I mean, I know that there was a real switch, and this is in New Jersey, from basically the community college doing most of the training to the licensees wanting to do the training, wanting to train their way, and so there was less of a need, frankly, for, and less of a demand for, because they were hiring people without training, without certifications, and training themselves. So I'm just wondering that, I guess I'm concerned that someone spends the money, gets the certification, thinks, okay, I'm all set, and then others who have had no training are able to get that same job very readily.
You know, there of course is no guarantee when you get trained that you will get a job. However, I think the strong partnerships that the community colleges especially are developing with, you know, our first licensee and the applicants now, you know, it is strong. I would say that this also addresses the concern that in Massachusetts, this is an entirely new industry, and we don't have the same number of folks who are trained in various professions related to gaming that New Jersey did at one time. So, so I would say this is this protects Massachusetts residents who want to get involved in this industry as well.
And 137.03 of these regulations, which appears on page 5 of the regulations in the middle of the page, also says, does it not, also sets out, does it not, a number of consumer protection devices, including a requirement that each of these schools explain to the prospective enrollee in explicit terms what the Commission's licensing requirements are, and that completion of a course does not mean any guarantee of employment, and requires disclosure of a number of other kinds of things. And that is consistent, is it not, with what the Division of Professional Licensure requires in other contexts, and has the mechanism to enforce and check on to make sure that those things are in fact happening.
I think that's right. In fact, to take it even a step further, there are regulations that are promulgated by the Attorney General relative to consumer protection in the arena of trade schools that we also reference here and say are applicable to these schools.
I appreciate certainly all the work that Todd, you and you, Jill, have done on this. You know, this was laid out to us in the statute as an optional. We may choose to issue regulations related to training schools, but when I think back to our early conversations with the community college who wanted that exclusivity agreement in terms of, or agreement in terms of offering training, we weren't predisposed to let them have that kind of monopoly on the training system, and I completely understand if you're somebody who wants to get into this field but you don't live near a community college, what would your other options be? But you know, for us to be able to take these, overlay these with the things that DPL and the other agencies already do already, I think speaks to the other provision, Section 5 of the statute, which says we need to make sure we're providing a properly trained workforce. But you know, I think the consumer protection piece is well highlighted. DPL certainly would have been on a longer road to try to undertake this work if we hadn't laid out this prescribed curriculum for a training school, so it helps them out in being able to, I think to the chairman's point, that they don't run up against some time delays or a backlog. They now have kind of a roadmap for us to follow once these regulations are in place.
Just to finish up my train of thought, we want to make this process be as expeditious as possible. Indeed, be appropriate, do the job, but be expeditious. And it feels to me a little bit like we've got these folks that are going to have to get licensed twice. All this stuff that they have to put on their application, they will already have, to us, they will already have had to put on their application at DPL. And it might be worth seeing what DPL's process and regs will be if they just lift this, and so that the applicant just has to Xerox what they sent to DPL, and now they can send it to us once DPL approves them. It can, we can keep the bureaucracy to a minimum, but, I hate the idea of, taking 5 months to get licensed / certified or more. And that's worth talking about with DPL too. How long does it take for this to happen?
But are you thinking of individuals or schools, Mr. Chairman?
Schools.
Oh.
Schools. And then maybe there's only going to be 3. I don't have any idea what it's
Yeah.
going to be, but we just, all along we've been trying to figure out, working with our ombudsman to try to facilitate the relationship for bidders and for municipalities and for everybody else who's involved in the process. And that's all. It just feels to me like you got 2 state agencies here that have their thumbs in the application process. Would have been nice if there were only 1. If there has to be 2, let's just make sure that we keep the duplication to the barest possible minimum, and keep an eye on the time frame and make sure that we know that it's happening expeditiously. There's one totally minor typo, I think, on page 2, paragraph 4. The sentence starts, licensing deems an application to be, I think it says complete. I think it means incomplete.
That's right.
Other comments, questions about this?
So this starts the formal promulgation process. What's the next step after this?
If you were to approve it today, we'd file notice with the Local Government Advisory Committee. Given the fact that this does potentially impact small businesses, we come back to you with a draft small business impact statement to take a look at for filing in 2 weeks with the Secretary of State's office, and schedule a public hearing for approximately 5 or so weeks from now.
Let me just ask one more thing. So when the application comes to our division of licensing, and they show that they have been licensed, I guess, by DPL, that creates a tremendous presumption, right? We're basically, then we just got to add on a few things, but they're done.
Yes, and we addressed that, at least we tried to, maybe not as clear as we should. On page 2 at the top, it's paragraph 4, the second sentence, that the Division of Licensing shall issue a certification to the applicant upon a finding that the application contains all the elements described. So there's no...
In the previous
on the previous page.
paragraph, right.
So there's no analysis or,
Right.
substantive review. If everything is there and they're properly licensed, then presumptively they'll
Right.
be certified.
Okay, great. So do we have a motion, Commissioner Stebbins?
Mr. Chair, I move that staff begin the regulatory approval process for 205 CMR 137 gaming schools with a small business impact statement to be presented before the commission in 2 weeks. Is that correct?
Right.
Is that right?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion on this motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
When we next take up this topic, though, I'd be interested in following up on whether the contents of paragraph 3 at 137.013 could be employed by the DPL in their applications, so that we simply have one application and it moves through 2 stages. Maybe that's possible, maybe it's not, but it'd be worth, that's a good suggestion and speeds up the process.
Yeah, that's exactly compatible with what I was trying to get
Right.
at.
We'll look
Right,
into
right.
that.
No, that's what
Yeah.
you said,
Yeah,
yeah. I
thank
just wanted to make sure it
Yeah,
didn't get
no,
lost.
that's good, great. Okay, I think that's it. Director Griffin, anything else?
I'm all set.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then we move to item number 4, research and problem gambling. Director Mark Vanderlinden.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman,
Morning.
Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm bringing back before you today a discussion on and an update to the responsible gaming framework. I presented this initially to you back in March. After that, we opened it up to public comment. We received comments from a number of stakeholders within the gaming industry, including all of our applicants and our one licensee, from the American Gaming Association, from the National Center for Responsible Gaming, as well as some comments from concerned citizens. I would say that by and large, there was agreement and support of the general concept of having a responsible gaming framework in Massachusetts. And that would include both the intent of it as well as the general strategies of it. So, for example, some of as I leaf through the comments where we found consensus in the document, strategy 1 pertaining to measures and commitments to corporate responsibility, strategy 2 measures to make information available through a variety of practices and methods, as well as self-exclusion. Strategy 3, measures to restrict access to underage persons and prohibit unattended children. Strategy 4, there was broad agreement to ensure responsible marketing practices. Strategy 5, prohibiting credit card and debit card acceptors on gaming machine platforms and banning ATMs from the gaming floor. Strategy 6, engagement, generally engaging the community. And finally, looking at the requirement of licensees to develop a responsible gaming plan. However, from there was also a fair amount of debate that ensued, not necessarily on the general overall strategies, but on the tactics or measures to move this responsible gaming framework forward. I appreciated all of the feedback that we got from these stakeholders. I think that there were several very good points that were made. I would therefore recommend to the Commission that there are several changes to the tactics, and I'll just briefly outline those right now. And those would include measures to limit the daily amount of points that a player may receive on a reward card.
These are things you're recommending
Correct.
be amended from your original draft.
Yes,
Right.
they would be amendments that I would see would not compromise the overall responsible gaming framework, but still ensure that a responsible gaming strategy is in place for the Commission and for our licensees. So it would include measures to limit the daily amount of points that a player may receive on reward cards, removing the requirement for a mandatory player card or reward card, and then there were certain aspects to the casino employee training that I would recommend that we would change as well, mostly in language and content of how that training moves forward. As an alternative to what I had presented within the framework, I'm in conversation with a couple different entities, including the Division on Addiction, as well as the National Center for Responsible Gaming, to explore what they're doing and what they would recommend in terms of casino employee trainings. There were also other areas that I think are much more ambiguous and that I think would warrant a further discussion and debate. So I would propose to the Commission that we engage a further discussion on the following areas. Within Strategy 2 of the draft framework right now, there is a discussion of responsible gaming features on gaming platforms. and it includes a number of different tactics that would fall kind of in the informative messaging and player feedback, including behavior analytics theme. I think that we need to have a debate on both what is feasible in terms of technology, as well as what would be generally accepted within Massachusetts. This is basically the feedback that we got from the applicants, and I would support that we would have a further discussion on that. Another area that I think requires further discussion would be the availability and use of pre-commitment tools. I think that the research on this is somewhat ambiguous and at certain points contradictory. It seems to me like a reasonable strategy or tactic within the responsible gaming framework, but I do agree that before we proceed on this, that we would have further debate on that. And the final one would be Strategy 5, and there are several points within Strategy 5, which is containing high-risk financial transactions. And that the areas that I think that we need to have further discussion on would be house credit restrictions, or how credit cards are used within a gaming establishment, and some of the check cashing restrictions. How we go about kind of the debate or discussion of those on these issues, and which issues we bring back up, I would be more than welcome any feedback and look to the advice of the commission. Before we, before we launch into that part of the discussion, I would like to just kind of highlight areas where I think that where we found sort of universal agreement, and where perhaps when we diverged, what that was about. So theoretically, I think that we are all in agreement, and this came through loud and clear through the feedback that we received, that we need to move forward. The best approach is an evidence-based approach, one in which there's peer-reviewed research that exists, that it's been in practice and is proven. I absolutely wholeheartely agree with that. I think that there are other areas where the evidence is ambiguous or simply doesn't exist, and that does not necessarily mean that we don't move forward or that we do nothing and we allow it to just proceed. And this is where, as I discussed in Appendix A within the memo that I'm presenting before you, that we utilize a precautionary approach. One that says that if there is risk that is there, but there isn't evidence about how to appropriately mitigate that risk, that we look at what options are available. And we employ those options, but we certainly take into consideration the feedback from our licensees, from our operator, from entities that perhaps have a fair amount of knowledge on these issues. And once they're implemented, we thoroughly evaluate the effectiveness of these measures, that we don't close the door on it, that we evaluate it, we determine whether or not it's something that we want to keep as a requirement. So with that, I would welcome any feedback.
I think that even the construct that you've laid out, data-based, evidence-based, where possible, with a precautionary approach is helpful, because it kind of creates a set of presumptions and it gives us a framework in which to look at issues. But as you're saying, precautionary approach is a word without meaning, really. I mean, it's got meaning, but it's the devil's in the details totally. Mm-hmm. And it's this constant weighing. You put this into your memo. It's a constant weighing of the public good or the majority experience versus the potential risk versus the minority experience. So it's something that it's great. I like the construct. It's just something we're going to have to be very, very careful to think through. And it raises a lot of, which we do all the time, weighing equities here with sort of unknown values on both sides.
But there's also a middle ground, isn't there? In some areas, it may not be adaptable to all areas. If there is a peer-reviewed data that shows that a measure is successful, that's one thing. If there is no data one can do the precautionary approach, put something in place, and then see what happens. One can also invite a participation by the operator in a study in which, in real conditions, data is collected in a scientifically valid manner. That is, a pilot program goes into effect, and one looks after a period of time at the results. And it seems to me that is another way to proceed in areas that would admit of a hard database solution. There'll be some that won't, but in those areas, it seems to me worthwhile. What we constantly encounter, it seems to me, is a belief that we ought to take Measure A as a precaution, and a resistance that's based on we don't need this kind of thing because it's not going to work or it's not going to be effective. And the only way to get by that is to get some agreed-upon matrix, perhaps measured and overseen and judged by some neutral third party, in which you take a look at what in fact happens. So I think that option, and I'm not talking about implementation, I'm not talking about specifics where it could work, I'm just saying that that option ought to be kept in mind.
Other folks?
Yeah, no, and I agree with everything that's been said, and I also understand and agree with your approach moving forward. I think where the framework got a little too prescriptive is where we're getting some of this feedback in terms of, well, how is it going to work, or that's not going to work, or et cetera, et cetera. So I think the approach, as you've laid it out, I think it's great. The next step obviously is regulation, but I think we're already getting a lot of good information in how we move forward for that step. But let's continue to think about these strategies and with everything that has been said here.
If I could just jump in there, I think the last part of all of Commissioner Zuniga's thoughts were important, but the last part highlights a couple of the comments that I read here, in which the commentator said this ought to be done by regulation, and not through some kind of a framework like this. I think it should be explicit that the framework is a policy judgment for promulgation of regulations that will be promulgated in the normal course and will receive comments and the like. It is designed to let everybody know, as sort of an overarching narrative, the ends we're trying to achieve, and perhaps in some cases the tactics to get there. But the formalistic process will be followed with respect to each and every one of these things that the Commission intends an applicant to be bound by.
This was always the intention. People misunderstood that, I think, so that's clearly we're planning on doing that.
Well, it wasn't clear to some of the applicants.
No, I understand that. It was clear to us that this was meant to lay a sort of a theoretical and a structural framework, which we then follow up. So I totally agree with you. Yeah. And I think people now get that. You've repeatedly said that in your responses. There was a suggestion made by at least one of the comments, and I don't know where we are on this, that having a public hearing on some of these issues where proponents and opponents have a chance to really hash these out in some detail. Now that may ebb a little bit, that interest may ebb a little bit because you've already changed some of the recommendations you're making on some of the more controversial issues. But I think that presumptively, again, at least, that would make a lot of sense. These are very important issues. By having a hearing, it raises the importance to the public and to the press and everybody else. And some of these issues are genuinely either contentious or, intellectually challenging, trying to figure out what's the right way to go. So where are you on that idea?
I see three options here, and the top option I think is this sort of let's hash it out in sort of a public debate in order to try to find out, to kind of filter out what the what the facts are, where the data is, and what may be agreeable to Massachusetts. So I think that that is certainly one option. Another option would be to have me present to the commission just kind of a range of options on any specific issue, from sort of least restrictive to most restrictive. The final option that I would see is to send this back and utilize some type of forum where the commission, myself, and anybody else from the commission who would like to participate would engage with our with these stakeholders, most certainly the applicants and the one licensee that we have, but others as well. A natural place for something like that to happen would be through the Mass Partnership on Responsible Gaming that's convened by the Mass Council on Compulsive Gambling. All three of those, I think, seem like very good options to me. I think that perhaps it's a combination of those. There's certain issues that I think lend itself very well to that sort of public forum. I think that discussion of pre-commitment lends itself very well to the public forum. I think a discussion of what types of mechanisms or responsible gaming features do we have on the gaming platforms, on slot machine platforms, would be another great discussion to bring to a forum. I think where I'm a little less certain of how it would play out in a public forum would be something like where we talk about containing high-risk financial transactions. The data is a little less clear. It falls more to a policy sort of approach, and ideally a policy approach that would be agreeable to all parties that would be doing business in Massachusetts. So perhaps that would be something that would be better suited to go to someplace like the Mass Partnership on Responsible Gaming. I would say all of it could go in one direction or another. It's up to, I would open that up to see where you all would like it to go.
Thoughts?
Well,
Well,
there are certainly a variety of approaches. I think, first of all, there are some comments that you have received that you agree with and are going to propose or make changes in the responsible gaming framework on the basis of, right?
That's correct.
So that's one category that at the moment we don't need to debate. You're convinced, you'll present it to us, and we'll, in all likelihood, approve it. Then there are a variety that you are undecided about, and then a set that you think are not worth adopting.
That's
do I
correct.
get that right? The variety that you are undecided about surely would benefit from a discussion of some kind, so that we all could have a conversation with all the stakeholders. What about the ones that you are, the suggestions that you think are unwarranted? How would you deal with those?
You know, as I've looked through the ones that I don't recommend that we would move forward with, very few of those actually have to do with very specific tactics and more sort of general approaches to items. So there are recommendations that are in there that I'm not sure I don't see where we would move forward with it, that we need to adopt a framework. We've committed to adopting a framework. We've committed to strategies, to identifying strategies, and it's the tactics where we would need to find some consensus on. So wherever there is disagreement on tactics, I would say that we would move forward with that. But where I wasn't recommending any changes didn't really necessarily have to do with tactics.
So is that by way of saying your sense is we probably ought to have a public hearing on whichever the issues are that remain open?
Yeah, I mean, a public hearing or some type of further discussion with, as discussed with Commissioner McHugh, we need to have an endpoint. We need to come to a point where we make a decision on these. And so whether that be through a public hearing relatively soon or some type of meeting of all the stakeholders that have varying opinions on these to try to come up with a position that would meet the intent of the responsible gaming framework as well as the interests of other parties. It could be an interesting discussion.
Well, it occurs to me, and this tries to dovetail into Commissioner McHugh's point, but it occurs to me that there's a natural next one, that next step that you mentioned that could be very useful for whatever can be addressed there, and that's the partnership. You know, if it's not a public hearing, but a better understanding about among the parties as to, you know, what we're talking about, strategy versus tactics. You know, there could be a lot of good feedback there.
May I make a recommendation?
Yep.
That we utilize the Mass Partnership for Responsible Gaming. The entire framework comes back before the Mass Partnership on Responsible Gaming and all the stakeholders there, and we identify the areas in which it makes it that we would need to have that sort of level of further discussion on, or we decide where we may be able to have a discussion within the context of that group to come to a recommendation that can then be presented as an option to the commission. But that it goes back at that level, sort of line by line.
So you all would try to work out an agreement at that level, and that might take care of everything. If you can, then you could come back either with a recommendation with everything dealt with, or if there were still open issues, we could decide whether we wanted a public hearing on those.
Correct. I'm confident that there are certain issues that we can find some level of agreement on, or that there already is agreement on. I'm confident that there's going to be issues that we're going to want to have a debate on.
Well, that sounds reasonable to me.
And that group represents all the stakeholders. I mean, it includes all the stakeholders, all the stakeholders, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Great.
I think that, yeah, I agree. That's the next logical step.
So let's do that.
Great.
Yeah, makes sense.
I had a few other questions. We got a letter, an email, and Attorney General, Councilor Blue got this also about this, whether the law precludes ATMs in like casinos anyway, somewhere else. Remember this document from Mr. Paul Stein in Westport? Have you had a chance to look into that?
We've started to look into it. We haven't completed our review
Okay.
yet, but we will.
Okay. It was a very interesting observation from this guy and needs to be checked out. See if-
The thrust of that is that the banking rules prohibit ATMs in places where gambling.
Right. The laws passed, right, way back.
Back in
at
the
beginning-
70s.
Back at the beginning of the lottery, where it said that you can't have ATMs, essentially. It said you can't have ATMs in any facility where there is legalized gambling except the lottery. And we're not sure whether that's still on the books or whether that's been amended somehow or other. But that would be helpful. Actually, we'll be sending up our I don't know if we have a chance to do this, but we'll be sending up our legislative proposal next week. It'd be nice if we could conclude it, but not essential. Okay, thanks. All right, well, I had a bunch of questions about where you are coming down on a lot of the issues that were raised here, but maybe it's not worth going into it at this point. Given the two steps that we're going to be taking, maybe we'll sit tight on that and hold it until we see where you end up after you've had your partnership meeting.
Great.
Okay.
If I may,
Just to follow up on that point,
sir.
this matrix that you presented would be also a matrix, in essence, that the responsible gambling group would look at, right? I mean,
That's
that'd be sort of the agenda for the discussions.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes. If I may, there's two entities that were not, I guess Marlene would be able to speak more directly to this, but that are not members of the Mass Partnership Responsible Gaming, which would be the American Gaming Association and the National Center for Responsible Gaming, both of whom provided feedback to this, and I would make sure that we make sure that it's an open. I would recommend that we make it an open forum for this discussion,
Right.
but still convened by them.
Right.
That's okay.
Right.
Other stakeholders as well who may want to come to the table on this. I don't want to exclude anybody that feels
Right.
that they have an interest in
Absolutely.
seeing this through.
Right. No.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Anybody else need a break? Yes. Yeah, okay. We are going to try to complete item number 5 before our lunch break, so it may be a little bit of a late lunch break. But before we go to item number 5, let's just take a brief break. We will be right back. All right, I think we are ready to reconvene the 121st meeting at about noon on May 15th. And we will go directly to item number 5, Administration Executive Director Day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Wow.
Just a couple little notes relative to a general update. Our Human Resource Office in horse racing now, we've filled 31 positions. We have filled our desktop support and gaming agent assistant director pending background, so we're excited and it looks like we're going to have some people on board to fill those.
Did you say Assistant Director?
Assistant director for gaming agents.
For gaming agents, oh.
Correct. And we've identified a good pool of applicants for financial investigators, so I think we're going to be able to find the resources we need to get started on that more aggressively.
These are financial investigators for IEB.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Also, our independent review on financial policy and comparison of travel policy, and our project to develop a new policy structure and accountability system, all 3 of those are well underway. We're going to be looking forward to those results.
Right.
And also, our contractor and staff team are continuing with development of our licensing management system, and we expect to begin demonstration and testing next week.
Great.
Next week.
Wow.
That's great.
Closing in here.
Right.
Great.
And then if I might, if the commission would refer to tab 5, I just had a couple introductory comments. You might recall on April 17th, we had a discussion, 5B, excuse me. April 17th, we had a discussion monitoring process scheduled, but due to time constraints, Jennifer Pink only had a few minutes to do a quick summary, and we were out the door. So we invited Jennifer back here today to provide an update, because now we're about 4 weeks into that part of the project. So we thought an update might be a good idea, as well as to take a few minutes with the commission to touch on the monthly report. Jennifer.
Good afternoon, commissioners.
Good afternoon.
I will spend a few moments giving you an update on where we are and what we are working on, both with Executive Director Day and the commission staff and Penn, all of which is closely related. We did have on April 22nd an initial meeting with Penn. It was Penn staff, the OPM team, and Turner Construction to talk about the way going forward. And you'll see in the notes that we talked about really what was our role going to be, the purpose intent of the oversight project management role, how they break down organizationally and what their approach would be to the design and construction. We talked with them about reportings, who is reporting and when are we reporting, and the content of reporting, some of which you'll see is pretty well established. And just to summarize, we are reporting monthly to Mr. Day. The licensee will report quarterly to you. We'll review those in advance. We talked about the information that we are going to require to really do our monitoring, because that's really what the role is, it's monitoring. And it has to do a lot with hiring, contracting, permitting, schedule, and et cetera. And we also had a discussion about where are they on their design and construction progress. They were just about to authorize some contracts to be awarded, or Turner to award contracts. They explained their approach to the what we call the construction delivery method. They call it design build. We in Massachusetts often call it fast track, which means that, as I think we discussed in earlier meetings, that they will be starting the foundation before they've finished designing the interior lighting. And that makes perfect sense if you have a very aggressive schedule, which they do.
the alternative is what's known as design, bid, build. You finish your design, you put it out to bid, and then you start. But under the circumstances, they have a lot of incentive to finish soon, and we would like them to. So they have an aggressive schedule. So they are taking that design, build approach, as they call it, and we would call it fast track. We discussed schedule, which is a big topic, and they committed to have by May 15th a preliminary schedule for our review. It'll be detailed, but preliminary, and I spoke with the Penn staff earlier. We will have it today, they said, at the end of the day. So we will really dig into it, because the intent is for them, for us, I should say, to present to you the schedule at the May 29th meeting, where they will present, we will have probably a 200 to 300 page schedule, but we'll bring up what's known as a high-level schedule, which has all the key tasks, all the major milestones, and all the deliverables, so that you can see what their approach is. Their schedule, the schedule we're asking them to deliver is a little bit different than they've been accustomed to, because we're asking them to not just include design and construction activities, but other kinds of activities that are required, for example, to open the facility. The surrounding community agreements, for example, require them to do baseline traffic studies prior to opening the facility. So we want to have that in this master schedule. We want to have it on the critical path. We don't want them, and they don't want, I'm pretty sure, to go, oops, a week before they're supposed to opening, we didn't do this baseline traffic study. So there are other things that one might not normally see in a construction schedule that we have indicated and they've agreed should be in there, so that you'll have the comfort and we'll have the comfort that they understand what it takes to build, design, build, and open the facility. And again, we're expecting the draft schedule for our review, and we're going to really dig into it as soon as we get it tonight. We also, since then, we're working on the program management plan, which I really raced through at that last meeting that Mr. Day referred to. We should have a good draft of that for Mr. Day to look at early next week. Part of our challenge in that, or the task in that, was to describe, for example, a few things that were policy level. One of them was a variance process. We expect that there may be times when a variance is going to be sought by the licensee. And keep in mind that we're looking at this PMP to apply not just to Penn, but also to the Region A, Region B, and Region C. So the complications that may, and the permutations that a licensee may go through on some of the other developments may be a lot more, for example, than Plainville or Penn. But the variance process that we've submitted and to the staff to look at has requested that if the licensee wants a variance, that they really need to describe what the change or the relief is, the reason for it, what condition, commitment, or document references the basis for the variance, what other elements of the gaming facility might be impacted if the relief is or is not granted, state if the relief will impact the critical path schedule, and if so, they have to provide us with the details so we can understand if there's a schedule implication. We want to know if this will if the relief requested will affect workforce or supplier diversity. And we want to know if this relief would impact the cost or cause the value of the work to fall below the minimum investment. So we're asking for them to really lay out this in some detail. We've anticipated the situations which may require a variance, and those might be an alteration in design, which would impact safety, security of the gaming operations, or are non-compliant with the statute, regulation, RFA2, their application, or other commitments. Significant alterations in design, unless they're necessitated by approvals from other regulators. We still want to know about them, but we might expect that a MEPR certificate or a planning board, a local planning board may require some adjustments. So we're suggesting that those would not require a variance, but we will require them to report on them in their quarterly report. And we'll be keeping the staff apprised of them on a more month-to-month basis. Schedule changes, which would extend the opening by more than 1 month. And changes in construction not otherwise regulated by law or permit, which would impact the community or violate a portion of a host or surrounding community agreement.
Jennifer, can you repeat those? Is that anywhere in the packets, by the way, any of your remarks?
No, it hasn't made it to the packet
Okay.
yet. It's
Can
in
you
draft.
highlight the variances again?
Sure, the reasons for them?
The instances where you see a variance,
This is
need for a
sort of
variance?
the realm that we see might happen. I do think it's going to require some judgment. We may not anticipate them, but the thinking is the alterations in design which might impact safety or security of the gaming operations and are non-compliant with the statute, regulations, RFA 2, their application, or other commitments. It's a pretty broad category there. Alterations in design unless necessitated by approvals from other regulators.
What level of design do we have currently?
Well, we have schematic, I would say, is somewhere between concept and schematic is what came with RFA 2.
How will we judge an alteration in design?
Well, that I think is the sort of the $64,000 question. What constitutes a change? I mean, clearly a different height is an alteration. And I'll use Plainville as an example. Right now, they've said there'll be a direct connection from the garage to the gaming establishment. What if they said, you know what, we don't want to do that anymore? To me, that would constitute a significant change. We may not, I'm not weighing in on the merits of it, but I'll just go through that. What if they said that they, for example, their approach to renewable energy was significantly different than what they had submitted with RFA 2, and it would have an impact on the design. That might warrant a variance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the easy examples at the tail ends are very easy to kind of get our minds
Yes.
around. It's the continuum that starts to be more of a judgment
Exactly.
call.
I think that's been the issue that I've been struggling to define well enough so that we'll know it when it happens.
Right. Can we, or have we asked, or can we take steps towards having a document like a basis for the design? A narrative of things like the garage, as represented in the drawings, will connect directly to the gaming floor.
We actually have a checklist that
Okay.
we're working from. I would not call it the basis of design, but I would call it a checklist where they've said they will use locally sourced materials, where they will they'll have 4 charging stations for electric vehicles close to the front door, and those kinds of things. So we have that checklist. We've developed
Great.
it. We've culled it from the RFA 2 application.
Great. I'd love to see that at
So
some
that
point.
we can, because again, some of this will rise, I think, to the level of variance, and some may not.
So what do you anticipate would be the variance approval process?
We expect that the variance approval process will be them submitting to us a request for variance, which outlined the things that I previously mentioned. And what we will do is we're going to perform an initial review for completeness and for the justification. And we are going to review it and forward it to the MGC for approval. We're suggesting within 5 business days, or we'll promptly notify the licensee if we need more time or information, because we don't want to be the cog in the wheel. We think these things need to get moving along quickly. We are going to submit them to the executive director or his designee with an assessment and an initial recommendation. We are suggesting that a copy of this request will also be forwarded to the general counsel simultaneously, and that the executive director will approve or reject each request and notify the licensee in writing within, haven't settled on the exact number of days, but promptly. or if additional information is needed, and that the general counsel will determine if an approved variance will necessitate an amendment to the license conditions, and if so, prepare the same for licensee review and execution. We also anticipate that the executive director will, and with our consultation, consider whether this variance request should rise to the level of commissioner review and approval. So that's the framework for it.
Yeah, this is all going to be in writing someplace.
yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was just, that answers my question.
Okay.
I was just wondering what happens if the building height goes from 400 feet to 160? And who gets to have the final say on that? All right.
Yep. So we've done that. Also, we've met over the last 3 weeks with staff and with Penn to discuss Gaming Commission on-site office space requirements, whether it's IEB, licensing, racing, and other. And we have another meeting scheduled for next Monday with Penn and the executive director to talk about that. And then very quickly, talking about what's really gone on site, construction has commenced with earth-moving activities. They're moving dirt out there. Our monthly report that we will be submitting to the staff will include a few pictures, just so people can see what's actually going on. We expect to have shortly. One of the things that we have been doing with Penn is trying to coordinate the timing of the information they will receive from Turner with the reports that we're going to submit. So we're trying to blend that seamlessly, so we're not either making people jump through extreme hoops on getting data to us, which they have to get to other individuals anyway. So mid-month is our targeted date for the monthly report. And in terms of the monthly report, you'll see the template that we have in here, which I think is a good beta test for the ongoing OPM responsibilities that we will have in Plainville and in other regions. The idea really is to give you the executive director, a high-level summary of what's going on, an assessment of the schedule, highlight what approvals are needed by the Gaming Commission staff, because there are a lot of items that Gaming Commission staff do need to approve. A high-level summary on permits and approvals, an update with surrounding community and host community issues, which we expect and hope to be very minimal, and then supplier diversity and workforce participation. The final pages in this have a project cost update, which I think we are expecting we will only report on quarterly. We don't expect that there would be that many changes from quarter to quarter on the value of the minimum investment and any procurement they are doing or design changes that would really significantly alter that. And then at the end, if there are any variances, report on those, and any requests for information which are outstanding so that we can see what they are. We do propose to implement a request for information process between the staff and Penn having to do with design and construction. We were going to put the door and the Mass State Police next to X, Y, and Z. We need to move it to the other side of the wall. Is that okay? And we'll monitor this information going back and forth. That's a very pedestrian one, but there's security surveillance so that they don't fall through the cracks in terms of the Penn getting the information it needs on a timely basis and you getting the information you may need from them.
So the RFI here, you're going to be tracking RFIs between us and Penn, not between, say, Penn and Turner or their architect?
No, we'll see them. We'll be monitoring them because they're going to give us everything that they're producing out there. But I don't propose that we would be submitting that to you.
Okay.
That could be hundreds of pages. And we're going to be trying this report template out, and we'll see how it works. I think so far Penn has been very cooperative. I mean, we are asking them for more information, they have said, than any other jurisdiction. So they are getting acclimated and or getting adjusted to being able to give us the stuff we need on a timely basis, so we in turn can report on it to the staff.
Do you know what we're asking for that others don't?
What I have understood is that a lot of what they said is occasionally it's schedule and cost.
Is what
And-
people typically
yes,
ask for.
and then what they were saying was cost, but this is a little bit anecdotal conversation we had in the meeting.
Yeah. Comments, questions?
So you'll be getting, I guess, close of business today, the preliminary schedule. Do you know if they've issued already the notice to proceed formally?
What they've authorized about, as
Early packaging.
they said earlier today, we heard about $18 million or $17 million worth of work to commence.
Great. I thought, excuse me,
Oh, no.
other comments? I thought the template looked really good, it's if you can really winnow the information down to these bullet points, try it like we were talking about on the licensing of schools, if you can try to do it with a minimum of bureaucratic imposition on these folks. And a lot of it has to do with starting out right so that their systems are easily tied to what we're trying to get, so it isn't real terrible pain for them. But I liked the template. I thought it's a dashboard type device, which I thought looked on the face of it really good.
Thank you.
Just on your project, your May 12th update, just a couple of minor things. We do also have a mandate under the legislation that the license holder must provide space for various kinds of services having to do with problem gaming. We haven't figured out yet what, if anything, we want to do with that space, but they do have to offer it. So it's something to keep
Yes.
that on the checklist. And also under license deliverables, develop plan to market to unemployed residents 90 days from award. Isn't that 90 days from award the entire affirmative action plan that's due? Was it just, why did you single out
Well,
just the?
we found, this is in the license condition. I think it comes from the regulations, and it's within 90 days, and I believe it has to do with, this is focused on operations, not employment.
Right.
Not,
It is,
Yeah.
but I just thought it was broader. Do you know this, Commissioner Stebbins? I thought it was.
oh, maybe we're missing,
I thought it was the broader plan for all kinds of staffing obligations.
No, what Penn did, what we required in the license was within 30 days of the award of the license, the affirmative marketing plan for design and construction. They added in, I think, employment in that, and then we gave them 90 days to do the full operational viewpoint.
Right. So it's not just the plan for unemployed residents, it's the whole
Right.
hiring.
Right.
Outreach plan. Okay. Anything else for Ms. Pink?
No, I too think this is a comprehensible and succinct template. Just for information purposes, it would be helpful if, is this going to be posted on the website, or? I was thinking that I would like to, just for information purposes, see some of these things, see actually this template on a monthly basis.
I think
I
the
don't
intent is-
anticipate an action item, but.
as our reports on the project coordination, we, twice a month, we submit a report to the executive director, who I think distributes it internally. And I
Yes.
believe the intent is to do the same for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would certainly want to see this every
Yes.
time it comes out.
Yep.
Right.
And I think we'd want to coordinate with our Director of Communications, because this is information the public's going to be interested
Yep.
in, too.
Yeah.
And then the public report, the quarterly reporting, which Penn will do, and we'll be at the table with them.
Right.
Question, have we had anyone take a look at their schematic, what they intend as far as best practices and security surveillance, meaning I know there's a real level in New Jersey anyway of detail with, money rooms, locations, movement of money, armored cars beneath the facility. So there really are best practices, and I just didn't know if we had had anyone take a look.
We're starting the discussion.
Okay.
And we plan to facilitate this conversation. But we have talked, for example, just about armored cars. We had a meeting with the state police and.
Right, but I'm thinking we probably here in the Commonwealth do not have that
Right.
knowledge. And, someone like Michael and Carol may be able
Yeah.
to be helpful where they've overseen build of projects.
And we also, as a resource on our team, is HLT, who have been engaged
Right.
on the financial analysis, but they really are gaming operations specialists from the finance and the physical buildings. So we do have the resources, and it's on our radar screen.
Our regulations call for them, if I remember correctly, to submit architectural plans as early as they have them available, which is what I was asking relative to where they may be in the schematic design phase. So when we're able to get those drawings, we'll be able to forward them to some of our experts as well.
That's right.
And start to have those discussions.
And that's why we're anxious to get the schedule, so we can see when do
we
these
get-
pieces of the puzzle come to us, making sure there's enough time for review, because to the extent that they need approval, we want to have a thorough time to review them and return them with comments or return them approved. So that's a big part of the schedule concerns that we have.
We're also pretty confident that as our new assistant director comes on, he has specific experience in opening facilities and has been involved in all phases of surveillance and security, so I think it'll be very helpful as well.
Good.
I have one more, if I might add. I'd like to introduce you, some of you may not have met, my staff, Dane Wigfall, right here, whose responsibility is the Plainville site. He'll be down there a good bit of the time. I think he has met a couple of you informally, but he comes to me. He's also a Massachusetts transplant. He came from the West Coast, so he's been here about 12 years. So
Great.
You'll
Welcome.
be
Great.
hearing
Welcome.
from
Welcome
him in the
aboard.
coming 15 months.
Great.
Great.
Great, welcome.
He's not from Iowa, though.
No. California.
Right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, next up.
So that should get us to tab 5C. And what we're here with the commission this afternoon is request approval and authority to file with the Secretary of State the assessment arbitration, which is the amendments were made to that regulation for the fundamentally inconsistent process, and as well the self-exclusion regulations. I might add that there was no comment at the hearing for these regulations, and we did have one written comment, which is included in your packet from Penn, which I'll briefly refer to and do my best to. I believe we've addressed every point that Penn raised. That'll only take a few minutes. Also, within your packet would be the amended small business information sheet that legal has also provided. So if I might have you go ahead and take a look at the packet, in particular the regulation. And I'm going to go over not going to go over the assessment and the arbitration regulation, but I'll touch real quickly on the voluntary self-exclusion.
Could I just ask about the assessment? That's 121, that's 205 CMR 121, right?
In 118 as well, the two
I see.
amendments are
118,
together.
That's
Yes.
right. But I forgot now, those are in effect on an emergency basis now?
Yes, they are.
Yes. And the fundamentally inconsistent 205 CMR 125.016C is also, oh, that's part of it, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes,
That's in effect as an emergency regulation as well.
that's correct.
Right, so we've been through those. Okay, thanks, I'm up to speed now.
Just before you go on, I had two quick things, and forgive me, because I know we've been through this a lot, but at the beginning of the fees, 121.01, paragraph 3, the following fees are due and payable to the commission for each gaming establishment. This is really minor, but it seemed odd to me to refer to the gaming establishment as opposed to the licensee. The payments aren't from the gaming establishment, it's for the licensee. Is there a reason why you wrote it that way?
We wrote it that way because there's a distinction in some of the fees as between positions. Some of them are based on different calculations. And so the way to capture all of that was to refer to as a gaming establishment as opposed to the licensee. It's to reflect how they're calculated. So certain fees, the slots fees, are based on positions. The assessment is based upon positions per gaming establishment, per licensee. It was simpler to use that as a catch-all.
Okay. And then I wondered whether on the 121.04, the commission annual budget, we have discussed and I think agreed that the idea of submitting the budget in some way to our licensees so that they have an opportunity to review it and interact with us on it would be constructive. Would it make sense to add some such reference? And I'm asking everybody, would it make sense to add some such reference to that, just to sort of formalize it? Bring
I would dissuade us from trying to do that in regulation. I think we have a lot of discretion to set up these processes by normal course of administration, but the format and venue and composition of these kinds of things could very well vary from year to year, and I would hate for us to have to amend regulations just to comply with that approach. So I would be in favor of, I think it's a great idea, but I would be in favor of not including that in regulation.
And I believe when CFO Lennon came before you, he talked about a policy that was in place to support these regulations, and one of those things would be in the policy, which would be how he shares it with the licensees.
I agree that at least at the outset, the kind of flexibility inherent in Commissioner Zuniga's approach and the current regulation is preferable. This is a staff-developed thing that comes to us after the staff has approved it, where the proper place for that licensee input is, what form it takes, how one deals with the open meeting law with respect to that. All of those are complicated, and it seems to me we ought to go step by step here, think them through, and then make an amendment to regulations if we need to, but at least start off this way.
Right. Okay, that was it for me.
Can we move to self-exclusion, or any other questions on
Yeah,
this?
I think so, yeah.
So one thing I would like to note when we'll see there's red in the document, but one of the changes has been to basically add the pari-mutuel simulcasting wagers language all the way through the policy, so it's clear it applies as well to our racing side. And if you go, actually, I think it's the last document right behind the reg, is a letter from Penn National. And so I want to...
Can I just stop you there
Yes,
for a minute? That means, and maybe we already discussed this, and I apologize if repeating, or wasn't mentally present during that discussion. That means if somebody requests exclusion from a casino, they're excluded from the racetrack, and vice versa. Somebody's excluded from the racetrack, they're excluded from the casino. Is that right?
They would be, I'm sorry. They would be excluded from placing a wager at the horse track.
Would they
Not
be
from the actual establishment itself.
if they're on the casino exclusion list, they can't go in the casino.
They can't go on to the
Gaming establishment.
the gaming area of the gaming
The
establishment.
gaming area. Okay. So if they ask for exclusion from the casino, the gaming area, then what are they excluded from at the track?
It would be excluded from basically placing a wager at the racetrack.
They could go watch the race, sit at the restaurant, look at the simulcast screen, but not place any wagers.
That's correct.
Okay. So it's not possible for, just the final question, not possible for a person to say, I want to be excluded from the casino, but I want to be able to place a bet on a horse.
No, it would be a policy that would apply, or a regulation, I'm sorry, that would apply to both.
To both? All right.
Correct.
Okay, got it, thanks.
Is that common practice in other jurisdictions where racing and gaming are part of the state's gaming activities?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I can answer that. The rationale was that since we regulate both of these areas, that we wanted to have a regulation that applied to both areas. We did not want to separate, it was not the intention to separate specific types of wagering that one could do, because, that was not the intent of it.
Is there anything to suggest that the issues having to do with problem gambling for horse racing gambling are any different from the problems having to do with casino gambling?
You know, I think it comes down to gaming type and a discussion of gaming type, and whether that be placing bets on a horse, a slot machine, table games, the lottery, whatever it may be. And that certainly you have situations that run the full spectrum. You have individuals that gambling, placing bets in general, is not something that they feel like they would be able to, they should have access to, and that's why the self-exclusion regulation would be there. There are individuals that would say, you know, I would like to maintain that I could have access to continuing to play the lottery, but I can't step foot into a casino that causes that's where my trouble is, and probably racing would be in that as well, and this regulation does not necessarily have the flexibility to identify that it's just racing where I've had problems with my gambling behavior, or just a slot machine, or just a table game. It's a regulation that would apply to all areas of gaming that is regulated by the commission.
I understand and appreciate that, and this is only being put out now for public comment, so I have time. This is final?
No, this would be final today. We did hold the hearing on
Okay,
this.
all right, got it. I just wonder if it would, I can see the unitary casino thing. I have trouble with blackjack, but I don't have any trouble with poker, is too fine a line. But I can see, at least intellectually, without any basis of knowledge, somebody saying, I've got a problem with the casino, but I've been playing the horses for 20 years, and I really enjoy that, and I've never had a problem with that. And I know that if I self-exclude from the casino, I can't do that anymore, so I'm not going to self-exclude from the casino where I really do have a problem. In other words, is there, by linking the two, do we create a disincentive for self-exclusion? I don't know the answer to that.
Right. I think it's a great question. Does this create yet another barrier for somebody to sign up for the self-exclusion?
Right.
That they don't want to limit their access to
Right.
placing a bet at a racetrack, but they do want to exclude from casino games.
Right.
What did they do in Iowa?
It was across.
It was unitary in Iowa?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And there's also a parallel here relative to minors, right? Minors can be in, or individuals under 21 can be in the racetrack area, but cannot be in the gaming area.
Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
I
I
think
I
that-
know that they can't be in the gaming area, but I'm not sure about
I know that's
where
I
the
think it's
lines are
based-
drawn on the racetrack.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Okay.
Well, okay, if it's done elsewhere, and it sounds like to me it may be standard practice, then we,
I mean, it's certainly something that we can look into, and we can always change this if we feel like we need to. But
Yeah.
given that it's, we brought you in because you know a fair amount about this, and your jurisdiction did it this way, and there's at least a logic to it, it seems like, let's go with this, and then, but it's worth doing some checking around and thinking it through. And, this is, maybe we're doing one of our precautionary steps here, let's
Right.
try it this way.
Right.
But think through and do a little more research and make sure that we're not having the opposite effect that we really intended.
Right.
And there were no comments.
No, we did not receive any comments on that aspect of it.
so that part was out for public comment as well? That?
No,
That
Actually,
is
that-
the only comments we received on this regulation was the set we received from Penn National. So we have had this out for comment. There was no other comment.
Was, no, I mean, was the racing
The
exclusion,
parimutuel.
was the parimutuel exclusion part of the public comment package?
No, I believe that is a Penn National comment, is it not?
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, that's a great point. That feedback came from within the commission, from Director Durenberger. So we had comments from you, Commissioner McHugh, as well as Director Durenberger and Penn National. But this version of it with parimutuel wagering included in it has not seen that level of public comment.
So does that mean we want to put it out again, or should we just go ahead and adopt it and then see what happens and deal with it? I mean, that always happens, right? You can't,
No, the public
Yeah,
comments
public-
come in,
all-
public comments come in, you don't put them out for
You don't
public
put 'em out
comment again.
again, right,
Right, right, right.
so it seems to me we still ought to go ahead and adopt this.
Yeah, I think we should. We
Keep
need
keep
to
an
have,
open mind. Keep-
right.
Right, be attentive to it. Unless I missed it, the third-party addition, third-party ability to put somebody on the self-exclusion list is not here. Am I right, or did I miss it?
That's correct. That would come in another regulation.
Okay, so okay. So we're still thinking about that part of the self-exclusion issue.
It would be the exclusion, not the self-exclusion. But that
Oh,
that
good.
regulation
Yeah,
would
good
come,
point.
be a logical next step, I think, yeah.
Yeah, got that, okay. Got it. And it looks to me like we did accommodate, I think we accommodated all four of the Penn National concerns. Were there any of them that we did not?
Yeah, there were three of the four that we that are resolved, either just by the way that our self-exclusion database will be set up, or just accepting them as it seems like it was a reasonable request by Penn, and so we were able to accommodate that. The one that I wanted to bring back to the commission that I think does warrant a discussion about how we want to proceed with it is it's their third comment. So the top of the second page, in the original draft version that went out for public comment, it's 133.067. A gaming licensee shall not keep losses derived from gaming to an individual who is prohibited from gaming in a gaming establishment under 205 CMR 133. Where possible, the gaming licensee shall determine the amount wagered and lost by an individual who is prohibited from gaming. The monetary value of the losses shall be paid to the commission for deposit into the gaming revenue fund within 45 days. We heard the feedback from Penn, and as you can see on page 7, we kept the spirit of that, though changed the wording of it slightly. So as it reads now, in cooperation with the commission, the gaming licensee shall attempt to determine the amount wagered and lost by an individual who is prohibited from gaming. The monetary value of the losses shall be paid to the commission for deposit into the gaming revenue fund within 45 days. This specific piece came as a recommendation from a couple of our consultants, Dr. Leah Nauer from Rutgers University in the Center for Gambling Studies, Dr. Jeff Murata, Problem Gambling Solutions. This is not a regulation that I drew from another jurisdiction or that I was able to find in another jurisdiction. It may indeed exist, but I wasn't able to find it. The rationale for it is that the individual who's on the self-exclusion list forfeits their winnings should they be detected within the gaming establishment, but there is not a forfeiture of the losses of an individual should it be possible to determine that person is identified and a determination of what those losses are. And so this attempts to address both sides of that. I think that I hear the arguments being made by Penn on this issue. I followed up personally with Jim Baldacci from Penn. I think that their argument is true, that this is really difficult to try to determine, and that it can be an arduous process to do that and costly. I think that that's true, but I think that there are ways to determine that, and I think that there is leeway within the regulation that says where possible, and we further expanded it in cooperation with the commission.
Well, is there any merit to defining what we mean by possible? I mean, you could take somebody down in the basement and give them the third degree, or you go get somebody to burgle his house. I'm being clearly using outrageous examples, but where does possibility end and reasonable? Where's the intersection between reasonably possible and possible?
Rather than trying to define that, which is impossible, why don't we just add your word reasonable in there, like we have in other such things, and that gives us the standard to work this. I think we probably will know it when we see it, and as long as we're not going to go nuts trying to figure out how to do it. But putting the word reasonable in there, gives the applicant, gives the licensee the protection that we're not going to be unreasonable.
Yeah, I would certainly be happy with that. I was just wondering if there was some other standard someplace, but I guess this doesn't exist anyplace else, so there is no other standard. So, but I would like to see reasonably. I would like to see very reasonably in there.
I have excuse me, I just want to make sure, Commissioner McHugh, where did you want that added?
Where reasonably possible, the gaming licensee shall confiscate.
No, we had deleted that entire first sentence on 8, and then reworded the rest of the paragraph.
No, I'm talking about, I'm sorry.
On page
Which
7.
Which section is it now?
Section 8. It's paragraph 8. It's 133.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong one.
8.
7.
No, it's 7 is the winnings. 8 is the recovery of every.
Oh, yes. 8.
Well, okay. So what if we said in cooperation with the commission, and where reasonably possible, the gaming licensee shall determine and determine the amount wagered in cooperation with the commission, and where reasonably possible, the gaming licensee shall determine.
So we will get rid of attempt to.
Well, the reasonably possible puts a reasonableness standard on the efforts we're going to require.
Right. So in cooperation with the commission, where reasonably possible, the gaming licensee shall determine the amount wagered.
Right.
And so forth.
I had seen these in the prior draft of the responsible gaming framework, and I didn't think about bringing it up. I now see it in here, but there was a prior thought and discussion relative to the fees that get originated from here, from these kinds of things, to flow to the gaming control fund, not the gaming revenue fund. That would be my preference, because we would have a lot more discretion as to how to earmark those monies if we wanted to, say, do additional funding of certain problem gambling prevention programs, et cetera.
I recall that discussion. I believe that it's required in statute that it be directed to the gaming revenue fund.
Oh, that statute always gets in the way, doesn't it?
That's,
Details.
right.
Thank you.
All right, so do we need a vote on this?
We do. We would ask the commission to vote to approve the regulations, the small business impact statement, and to authorize the staff to go ahead and file this,
That would be with the,
well, with the Secretary of the Commonwealth, and take it through the final process.
and with Commissioner McHugh's changes.
Yes, that's right, with the changes suggested.
Do we have a motion? So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion as modified, presented and modified, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Thank you. Got one more item?
Just one more item is really a report behind tab 5D. You'll find requests and approvals to cancel live racing days on May 20th and 27th due to the current horse population. And then also there a change in post times on May 17th and June 7th to better coordinate the Preakness Stakes and Belmont Day. And of course, the live racing days must be rescheduled later in the season. So the Director Nurnberger has approved those requested, but wanted to make sure that the commission was aware.
Can we have delegated to her the ability to do that?
Yes, you
Yes, we
have.
did.
Right. Anything
All right.
else on your agenda?
That's the last item I have.
All right. It is about 5 minutes of 1. We will adjourn for a what? 45 minute till 1:45?
1:40, yeah, 1:45.
We'll adjourn until 1:45 for a lunch break and pick up thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we said that we would start at 1:45, so I'd like to resume the 121st meeting of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. We're dealing with Region A matters, and so Chairman Crosby has recused himself, and we'll proceed to deal with the rest of the agenda. The first item of which is a review and ratification of the decision in principle regarding the premises of the gaming establishment for Mohegan Sun and Wynn applications. We decided in principle this issue last week, said last week that we would ask staff to prepare for our consideration a memorandum dealing with the issues in somewhat more detail, and we're prepared to proceed with that now. General Counsel Blue. Or
Commission-
Assistant General Counsel Grossman.
It will be the two of us. Commissioners, in your packet today, you have a memorandum prepared by the legal department. We based that on the public meeting that we had last week. We are happy to answer any questions that you have about it, but we've essentially included both the questions that were considered into one memorandum. We have done a brief presentation as to what the arguments were by all the parties, and then a discussion and conclusion based upon your decision in principle.
All right, I think we've all had a chance to read it. Are there questions or comments from any of the commissioners?
Mine is a very minor one, but one that I've already discussed with our legal staff. Sometimes we refer to the city in capital
capitalized for the city of Boston, but there's also references to the city of Revere. And we just want to make sure that there's no ambiguity there. I know none is intended, but
We will clean up those references and make sure they're all consistent.
Yeah, that's a mechanical detail that we can handle after this. All right. Commissioner Stebbins, any thoughts with respect to the content of the?
No, I also had a chance to obviously review this. I know at our last meeting, I discussed the relevance of things like the boat dock, which are referred to here, and as I've reviewed it, do relate back to, I guess, the four-part test that you referenced earlier in the document. So having a chance over the last week to meet with legal staff and walk through my concerns on that, I'm comfortable with the way the decision has been written out.
Commissioner Cameron, any thoughts or questions, comments?
I thought it was well summarized from the conclusions that we reached and well prepared. So I don't have any thoughts on how to make this document better.
I too think that the decision, like all decisions, goes into far more detail than you can do in a public meeting as you're making a decision of this type, in outlining both the rationale in greater detail, both the result that we reached last week and the rationale for that result, and both of course are important. So I too am happy with the draft and am prepared to seek a vote approving it. Is there a motion to that effect?
yes, Mr. Chairman, I would, or Commissioner, I would move that we, this commission approve the decision as drafted and presented here today relative to the determination of the premises of the gaming establishment for Mohegan Sun and for Wynn.
All right, is there a second for that? And that is subject to the mechanical correction that we just talked about to ensure that there's consistency in the nomenclature for the city of Boston and the city of Revere, so there's no confusion. All right, any discussion with respect to that motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Now, that decision basically lays out the underlying rationale and the result that we reached last week, which deals with the location of the gaming establishment for both the Wynn and the Mohegan Sun applicant. There's one more formality that goes along with that, and that is the classification of, or the next step, really, I guess, is what we're talking about. The surrounding community decisions and I should say that follow from that doesn't go along with it. That's a self-contained document. So let's, for the next steps and considerations, turn to Ombudsman Ziemba.
Commissioners, the next step regarding surrounding community status, as has been a precedent, is the issuance of a written designation of surrounding community status. In this current situation, the City of Boston petitioned the Commission to be designated as a surrounding community, but reserved its right to contest host community status. Now that the Commission has made its determination regarding host community status, the Commission can issue its written determination. Both of the applicants assented to Boston's petition, and there is a notation that the host community proceedings could occur. But again, that has been concluded.
Sorry, you said host community proceedings or surrounding communities?
Host community proceedings were concluded just a couple of minutes ago.
Right.
Well, we had.
Oh, thank you.
Right. So the next step really is of the formal designation of Boston as a surrounding community.
That is correct.
Yeah. And that follows organically, I think, is the word we've used from the decision that Boston is not a host community. But we do need a vote for that. And the significance of that is, why don't you just mention that, Ombudsman Ziemba?
So what flows from the determination of surrounding community status is that the parties have to enter a 30-day statutory negotiation period, after which that 30-day negotiation period, if the parties cannot reach an agreement on a surrounding community agreement, then our arbitration procedures kick in. We have, over the course of the last month or so, we have added some additional flexibility to communities. We've added what is called the Flex 14 program, whereby communities, if they want to negotiate further or if they find an unanticipated bump in the road in arbitration, they have an additional 14 days that they can utilize to further negotiate or to overcome that arbitration obstacle. So with the designation of Boston as a surrounding community, that would start the 30-day negotiation period, which could be extended through the Flex 14 to 44 days before the onset of arbitration procedures.
Those are the consequences, and we're not deciding on any of that now. We're simply deciding the formal designation by a vote of Boston's surrounding community status with respect to both applicants. So, do I hear a motion to that effect?
Yes. I move that we officially or formally deem the city of Boston as a surrounding community to both the Wynn and Mohegan applications.
Period.
Period.
All right. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the ayes have it unanimously. Now, let me come back to you for a minute, if I might, Mr. Ziemba. I'm going to ask for you to outline in a second the remaining elements of the schedule, at least in a large format. We don't have to decide on details today, but in a large format would be helpful, I think, to all. But before we do that, I had raised the possibility of extending some time before the clock really started ticking. And we had discussed at a prior meeting that subject. Are there any thoughts on that from any of my colleagues today? I had raised the issue because of the nature of the proceedings. I'm not going to pursue that today because it seems to me that the Commission has demonstrated a willingness in the past for good and substantial reasons to consider variances from the schedule otherwise called for. And since that discussion began, we've adopted that Flex 14 process that you just discussed, Ombudsman Ziemba. So I'm not prepared to pursue any further discussions today, but I'm not prepared to, and I think none of us is prepared to foreclose a discussion if it's necessary at some subsequent time. With that then, do you have some thoughts for us, or some information for us, description for us is probably the best word,
So,
of the
Commissioners,
schedule?
in your packets, there is an outline of what could be expected in regard to the negotiation arbitration regarding these potential surrounding community agreements. And what we have outlined here is a schedule that anticipates that at least one of the negotiations could go through the entire arbitration process to the full extent allowed under our regulations, utilizing every day. We obviously hope that doesn't occur. We obviously hope that the parties can negotiate a mutually acceptable result. But what we've outlined here in the schedule is some dates that are predicated on the fact of arbitration is going to basically the last day. So you will see on this schedule, if we issue the written designation of Boston as a surrounding community today, tomorrow is that beginning of that 30-day statutory negotiation period, which would conclude on Monday, June 16th. After that date, there are a number of different steps. I won't go into each individual steps under our regulations on how arbitration proceeds. And what we could have is that arbitration could be concluded after being fully reviewed by the commission by approximately July 24th. After which, once arbitrations are concluded and an agreement is either reached by the parties or de facto reached under our regulations, we can then move to conclude host community hearings because we cannot close our hearings until all surrounding community agreements have been reached by all of the communities pursuant to each one of the applications. What we have is we have an estimated dates of July 29th and July 30th for the conclusion of those hearings, after which we could make an award no earlier than 30 days after the conclusion of those host community hearings by the Gaming Act. So what we have here is potentially we could make a decision on the license by Friday, August 29th. If the parties utilize those 14 days that I described, the issuance of the license could be issued by September 12th at the earliest. Again, these are estimated dates. There's a potential that we would be able to have a hearing. We're required under one of our regulations to have a hearing within 3 days. We've previously waived that requirement based on what our schedules look like. We could potentially move certain dates around, but I think that this is a good estimate of the dates that would be necessary for the City of Boston and the two applicants.
So in a big picture sense, about the end of August, the beginning of September, assuming that negotiations do not yield a agreement and the full arbitration process needs to go forward, with both of those assumptions, the end of August, the beginning of September is the time frame for making a decision both with respect to Region A. That's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
There's a number of moving parts in this schedule, and of course that can change. Those moving parts can change, the dates for them can change. And if there is an agreement on a surrounding community, if there's a surrounding community agreement, then for both applicants, then we can move the schedule up. But as it stands now, and given the unknowns, that's what it looks like. That's my takeaway from your presentation. Yeah.
One other item that I'll mention is I just mentioned the close of the host community hearings, which, as I mentioned, could not be concluded after all agreements have been reached. But we can begin the host community hearings within 30 days of the written designation today. We have contemplated a couple of dates that we could potentially use. We would need to confirm location, confirm them with all the appropriate parties. And if the commission would like, I can give you those dates, but otherwise we can talk about those at a later time.
I think those are the statutorily required hearings so that we can learn from the applicant and from people in the host, the surrounding communities, their thoughts on various aspects of it. Any thoughts on whether we should set dates now or wait?
I don't know that there would be much success in setting dates at this point. Our experience has been that they tend to move for a number of reasons, all of them usually very valid. I think the way you've outlined these target dates is as good as we can have now, and many of these dates are going to depend on availability of certain people, like we've heard in other instances, the schedules of arbitrators, the designations of 1 or 3 arbitrators or whatever
the case may be if they get to arbitration, and then that could change because maybe they get to an agreement before that. So the way you've outlined here is in my opinion, as good of a target as we can get.
We can certainly confirm availability with all the parties and availability of the room. I think it's our supposition that we would have the host community hearing, the beginning of the host community hearings, very soon after the expiration of the 30-day notice period.
Right.
So we can confirm those dates in the very near future.
Right. And we're going to get, at least through here, we're going to go through months in the summer, and that's usually, that kind of cuts both ways. In some instances, people can make it to public hearings, and in other instances, they're out on vacation. So we're going to have to take a lot of that in consideration as time moves on.
Sure.
Other
Yeah,
thoughts?
I
Yeah.
agree. I wholeheartedly agree that it would be difficult, if not impossible, to set dates and hold to them.
These are the internal dates. The end dates
Yes.
are clear, and we can hold to that. It's not going to, absent something totally unforeseen, we're not going to slip past those dates. But we're talking now, and it's important to remember, we're talking about some internal dates. That is, dates between now and then for a number of events that have to take place before that. Well, I too agree and think that we have gone as far as we can with respect to scheduling. Is this schedule up on our website so that people know? Can it be?
It is posted in our packet,
Right.
and after today's meeting, we can post it as
Yeah.
our estimated
Yeah.
schedule.
Yeah. And so it'll be available for everybody to take a look at, and that has both the end dates and the internal dates and a listing of the events that will occur between now and the end date. All right, anything further on that topic? All right, let's then proceed to the next item on the agenda, which is labeled decision-making process. I think, let me begin this by saying that there are four of us, and we realize that there are four of us who are thinking and considering the issue, thinking about and considering the issues with respect to Region A. We have been a group that has now had 121 meetings. This is the 121st meeting. We have had during those meetings a number of votes. If we average 2 votes a meeting, we have had 240-some votes since in the almost 2.5 years since we've been together. A little over 2 years, I guess it is. And I think one can count on the fingers of both hands the number of times it's been less than unanimous. This is a remarkably cohesive group. And we've also been operating with a group of 4 since, with respect to the land aspect of the Everett proposal, since the fall, and have made our way successfully through a number of difficult decisions there. But there is concern, and we're aware of the concern about what happens if there is a deadlock. And I think we need to address that, and I think we need to address that promptly, and I think we need to address that carefully. And I propose, therefore, that we do so, and that we do so in a manner that is careful and considered and prompt, and would like, therefore, to take the time to do that, do it carefully, do it considerately, and do it with reasonable promptness. We don't have a meeting scheduled for 2 weeks. There's no vote that can take place before the meeting occurs, but I'd like to try and find a way to at the outside, have some thought concluded and a proposal on the table by then, if we can't do it any sooner. I'm not sure what more to say about this, but I welcome your thoughts.
I agree with you that I'm very confident that we have the ability as a group of 4 to make these decisions and do it well. I have personal experience as a member of another commission in which there were at times an even number, and we worked very effectively. And I know there are a myriad of options available to us, and it would be, I think 2 weeks is the appropriate amount of time to do a little bit of research and make sure we're clear on a proposal that makes sense for us. But I'm very confident that we'll be able to work effectively.
I would echo that. Obviously, we've just reviewed the timetable, and we do have somewhat time on our side to be thoughtful about this and come back with some ideas as to how other boards, commissions, jurisdictions confront this issue, as well as hopefully taking a look at our own statute and regulations to see what are the things that we can do to make sure that we don't wind up in that deadlock situation.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I personally believe that a lot of after some good thought and research, there's a number of examples that I can think of in this state that may be relevant and give a lot of clear direction. I'm familiar with several of the many boards and commissions that have been created statutorily by many other general laws. And I think there's a lot of precedent for instances like this, and I know we will be finding great examples. I think personally that this possibility of a deadlock is very small, but it's important to think about it. And as everybody as all my colleagues say, have that topic carefully examined. I think we're going to end up in our regulations and our statute and the flexibility that is inherent in there, but I look forward to some of the examples and from other jurisdictions, not just the Commonwealth, that we can look at.
So let's engage staff to assist us, and let's think through carefully the series of options that's available to us. Let's come back no later than 2 weeks with proposals for us, the four of us, to discuss, and come up with a protocol for dealing with that highly unlikely eventuality. Okay. Let me raise one other thing that is not on the agenda, not for a vote, but just for an agenda-setting matter or a discussion as to whether we put it on the agenda, and that is we reached out to the public for commentary on design standards or excellence and the like. And I got a call the other day from a representative of the American Institute of Architects who is intrigued by the possibility of providing some of that commentary and wanted to appear at a meeting in 2 weeks to discuss that. I thought that I would invite him to do so, but I don't, and invite him to do so without involving the commission necessarily in endorsing the proposal, but simply to hear what it is and to understand what it is and to determine the extent to which we think it would be helpful and the extent to which we would or would not participate in it. It has, it's a public comment, it has some value, a lot of value, independent of whatever we do, but it is something that I thought would be helpful to hear him explain. John Nanari is the representative. He was helpful in arranging a forum that we held early on in this process, and he's prepared to outline what he had in mind in any event. So does that make sense to the...
It makes sense to me. The AIA, I think, and Boston Society of Architects have been very helpful to us from the early days of this commission. They hosted a forum, they produced a white paper. Right. They certainly have given us helpful thoughts and suggestions. Do you get the sense that he is providing comment I'm trying to think how we phrased the question, whether it was about the projects in Region A and Region B, or is it simply with respect to?
I'm not sure the dimensions of what he proposes to do. But he outlined in broad form what he proposes to do, and I thought I'd bring it up so that we could decide whether we wanted to hear from him, and with equal importance, hear from him. I think they can go ahead and do whatever they want to do. I mean, it's not up to us to tell them to do or not do it, the members of the public. But get clear the extent to which we are or are not involved in the process. I mean, ordinarily, public comment is just public comment, and we take that comment and have since the beginning from everybody. But if there is some kind of a process that he contemplates, it seems to me it's worthwhile to know what the process is and to be able to make appropriate endorsements or disclaimers with respect to how it goes forward.
I, for one, would welcome his comments and certainly suggest we put them on the agenda for a future meeting.
Okay. So.
I would agree. Information from experts is very valuable, and so I would welcome listening to this expert.
Same here. I would be interested, however, in. I have a question. I wonder if the comments, any comments that somebody like this individual may have, or individuals, if they become very specific to a particular applicant, we need to emphasize your point, Commissioner, that this is simply a comment. We could treat it as part of the several opportunities that we have, that we're providing to the public for public input. Right. But I would be a lot more interested at this point anyway to hear about standards, which the American Society of the American Institute of Architects, the Boston chapter, already has provided us a lot of great feedback under the realm of standards, how to analyze, how to view elements, design elements, attributes, rather than just looking at a building and saying, I like it because it's pretty.
Right.
So any conversation relative to the process, the evaluation, I would really welcome. And I would just be cautious relative to anything that was specific to any one of our applicants.
Well, that's why I thought it would be helpful to get him in so that not only we could hear it, but the applicants, the involved communities, and everybody could hear the same thing at the same time, and we could make the appropriate, as I say, disclaimers or endorsements. So let's have him join us at the next meeting. We'll hear what he has to say and see the extent to which we think it can be helpful, and give others perhaps an opportunity to be heard on that subject as well.
Commissioner McHugh, I believe we have inadvertently skipped item 6C. If we could consider that before the commission adjourns.
That's correct.
That's true.
Right.
Oh, I did skip that. Yes, we need to.
We can, it will be brief for the commission to consider.
Right.
You have in your package a memo from me. As you will recall, last fall, as part of the Suffolk suitability proceeding and determination, the commission requested that they divest themselves of any Caesar's interest in Sterling Suffolk. They intend to take that interest and place it in a divestiture trust. They have provided us with the trust agreement. It is the same in form as was provided for the Venado Trust. They have also appointed a trustee. His name is Stephen Oleski. He is of counsel to the firm of Hiscock and Barclay. And so I would ask the commission to approve the divestiture trust and the appointment of Mr. Oleski, subject, of course, to his going through the standard suitability review and process.
Should we approve before that we've had time to take a look at this individual? I mean, on paper, certainly he looks very well qualified. and accomplished, but is it appropriate to approve before we do a little due diligence here?
I believe we did approve the Renato trustee before we had finished the process. But it is subject, obviously, to him completing that process successfully.
I should say I know Stephen Oleski. In the time that I was in practice, which is now some time ago, I had a number of cases with him on the opposite side. I don't think we were ever joint representatives, and that ended in 1985. But he is one of the fine leaders of the Massachusetts Trial Bar. And so I don't have any hesitation in suggesting that we proceed with the approval of this, subject to his passing the background investigation. He'll get the same background investigation by the same staff that's done it before and does it for everybody else. But we do need to move that process along. And the sooner we can get that process done, the better it is. So I'd be inclined to accept that approach, General Counsel Blue, and move the process forward.
I would agree with that. The one question I have, and this is demonstrating my non-legalese background, I remember when we reviewed the trustee for Renato, there was significant experience, at least in the resume from that individual, showing that they had managed a similar type of divestiture trust. This is obviously a different situation, probably not as sizable financially an effort, but to help me understand his legal background. It's impressive, but I mean, help me understand his legal background and that he's has the capable experience to do this.
He is an experienced commercial and trial lawyer. He has a real property tax background as well. This particular trust is much simpler than the Renato situation, based upon my review of it. And so I don't think the trustee will necessarily be called on to do a good deal other than monitor the process as it goes forward. So I think he will be perfectly capable of doing that.
I'm comfortable with giving approval and allowing him to go through the back. I mean, he's a member of the Massachusetts Bar. I'm assuming we're not going to find anything that...
All right, so would somebody care to make a motion to approve the trust and subject to a successful completion of a background investigation, the appointment of Stephen Oleski as the trustee?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. That then, I think, does complete the agenda. Have I missed anything at this point? All right. So then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it unanimously, and we are adjourned. Thank you all.